Hello.
Today I'd like to talk to you about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, that I've been very passionate about for years. However, before I say any of the things that are the substance of this video, I feel the need to preface it by saying I am one of the biggest Yngwie Malmsteen fans you will ever meet. This is a screenshot of my Spotify Wrapped from last year. Now let's get into the meat of the matter. Yngwie Malmsteen is many a guitar player's hero. Once a god, events have transpired over the past couple of decades that have led to him in the public eye being regarded as more of a fat, sweaty, tone-deaf egomaniac than the idol that he was when he left Sweden for the US in the 80s. I'll start off easy. Let's talk about Yngwie's music itself. Get it? Easy? Because no one can play it? Aside from the thing that everyone and their grandma knows about Yngwie Malmsteen, that he's a blazing fast neoclassical guitar shredder, there's also his lyrical themes. While the quality of his lyrics and his music in general has been on a steady decline since like the mid-90s, which I'll get to later, the themes of his songs have pretty much always fit into one of three categories. Epic fantasy novel shit, sword fights, dragons, kings and queens, celestial shit, that kind of stuff. Fast cars because of his well-known affinity for Ferraris. And of course, love and heartbreak because he is a musician. Don't believe me? Watch. Queen in Love, fantasy and love. Meant to be, love, forever one, love. Hair Trigger, some kind of epic standoff. Red Devil, fast cars, it's about one of his Ferraris. Attack is about attack. Valhalla, mythological garbage. Into Valhalla, also mythological garbage. Top down, foot down, fast cars, god of war, celestial battles. Relentless fury, also war, fights, battles, that kind of shit. Bedroom eyes, love, heaven tonight, love. I could keep going. They all fit into one of these categories. There's never been anything unpredictable about Yngwie's music if you think about it, which isn't a bad thing, it's just an observation. Yngwie was never known to be the nicest of guys. Some might say that being literally God back in the 80s got to his head a little bit. Anyone from past band members to roadies to sound guys to fans to ex-wives can and will confirm that. Yngwie could never keep a drummer, or a wife for that matter, around for more than a couple of years, to the extent where now he goes on tour alone, hiring what appears to be like local wedding bands and just cramming them into one corner of the stage so he can have the rest for himself and his big ego. Yngwie's attitude has never really helped him gain in popularity. I mean, sure, if he wasn't the arrogant prick that he is, he would never have become popular, but it's never made him any friends, especially not in recent years, as his music has just gotten exponentially worse. So there's really very little ground to, like, defend him at this point. Of course, having a social media manager post this on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram multiple times a week seems a little tone-deaf in this context, but Yngwie has also seemed a bit tone-deaf in the past years. You've probably all seen him yell at Dimebag by now for offering him a donut back in like the 90s.
No, I don't eat donuts. You don't eat donuts? I don't fucking eat donuts.
But sugar-coated pastries were never his only reason to yell at or threaten other musicians, even on stage. A friend of mine, my old guitar teacher, told me a story. He went and saw him live, and the drummer did like the stick thing to set the tempo of the song, and Yngwie threatened to kill him. Because Yngwie's the metronome, not the drummer. You. Yngwie's been in the business since the early 80s, back when Shrapnel Records discovered him through one of his demo tapes and brought him out to the US. He briefly played with Steeler, a band that nobody knows, to create an album that nobody knows either, but that's actually really good, as you'd expect from Malmsteen in his early years. He's since released 22 studio albums, each kind of under slightly varying band names. I don't know why that is, it's just kind of whatever he felt like. It's either Yngwie Malmsteen, Yngwie J. Malmsteen, Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force, or Yngwie J. Malmsteen's Rising Force. It's all the same shit, but on album cover design day, when he was feeling particularly full of himself, he would just go Yngwie J. Malmsteen, and when he was kind of in more of a mellow mood, I suppose he'd just go Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force, kind of acknowledge the rest of the band's presence at least. But his style, as far as both appearance and playing style go, have remained consistently recognizable and, perhaps most importantly, good for about the first half of his career. Now, at this point in time, the keen listener may claim that Yngwie has released more bad albums than good ones in total, and for the most part, I am talking objectively terrible, unlistenable, awful, cacophonic. Sloppy playing, repetitive, lazy arpeggios, recycling the same solos, riffs, licks for like, I don't know, 15, 20 years, and perhaps most annoyingly, using the same just disgustingly reverb-soaked drum samples on what appears to be like every album of the past 10 years. It's ridiculous. Yngwie lost his passion, his music got stale. It really sadly does appear that for Yngwie, music has become more about being able to keep up his Ferrari habits rather than making meaningful music like he did back in the 80s when he poured his heart and soul into it and you could hear that in every note. In fact, allow me to quickly walk you through Yngwie's studio discography with a brief comment on each album. Trilogy. Absolute masterpiece, by no means his best album, yet still everything seems perfect. He definitely set the bar very high for what was to come with that album already. Odyssey. Within 2 years of releasing Trilogy, Yngwie learned how to not just shred like an absolute god, but also write deep and meaningful songs that hit you right in the feels. Odyssey is top 3 material for sure. Eclipse. Perfection. Literally, everything is perfect. Also, this is around the time I think Yngwie discovered that you could write songs about love, which becomes very apparent when listening to the album start to finish. I've always liked to refer to Eclipse as Yngwie's love album, but it's incredible. Fire and Ice. Yngwie's best album, hands down. An album full of curveballs, impossible to define the genre of. Also, the title track was likely the first Yngwie Malmsteen song you've ever heard, for good reason. Sadly, Yngwie himself hates this album and refuses to play any of the songs off it live because of a falling out that he had back in the day with vocalist Goran Edman. Seventh Sign. Overall, probably Yngwie's heaviest and most emotional album, Pyramid of Cheops and rips, go listen to it. Magnum Opus. While not quite literally Yngwie's magnum opus, in my personal ranking of his albums it takes second place. Fun fact, the instrumental piece Amber Dawn on Magnum Opus was written for his ex-wife, Amber Dawn Landon, who left him to become a dominatrix. Great album. Inspiration. His first cover album, just marginally worse versions of classic rock songs, so not really worth listening to if you're a fan of the music he's covering. Facing the Animal. This one is Yngwie kind of leaning away from the I'm an epic guitar prodigy narrative and sort of leaning more into the I'm a fucking rock star and I get bitches image, which suits him very well. It's a good, heavy glam metal album. Alchemy. By all accounts, made by people much, much older than me, this is when people started to sort of question Yngwie. Sloppy, off-tempo playing, just very poor songwriting in general, but I wouldn't call this the beginning of his downfall yet, because it gets much, much worse before it gets really bad. War to End All Wars. I'm not even in the mood to talk about this album right now. It's awful, almost objectively. The songs wouldn't be any good if the production and guitar tone were at least slightly up to standard, but they're not. There's no redeeming factor to this album, not even the name or the album art. It's all crap. Terrible. Next. Attack. Good news, Yngwie's playing got better again. Maybe he laid off the booze while recording this album. Fuck if I know. But sadly, the songs themselves are weak. It's like a very structurally sound, yet very ugly building. The Genesis and Unleash the Fury. I put these two in one segment because to me they're essentially the same. They were released consecutively, and they are the two Yngwie albums that no one fucking knows or talks about. Having listened to both of them, however, I can understand why. Moving on. Perpetual Flame. Not a single song on this album is on tempo. It's awful, cacophonic, and it's just painful. Also, I wouldn't usually accuse someone of just blatantly stealing an album title like this, but Yngwie and Jason Becker were at one point both signed to the same label. So yeah, Perpetual Flame is stolen from Perpetual Burn. Angels of Love. Acoustic covers of his songs dedicated to his still current wife, April, which is pretty cute, so I really can't say anything about that. Relentless. The first album of many to come to feature those annoying drum samples I mentioned earlier. Also, he reused Molto Arpeggiosa from War to End All Wars and just kind of changed it up a tiny bit and re-released it as Arpeggios from Hell. Spellbound. The first album Malmsteen ever made entirely on his own after basically getting into fights with everyone previously involved in his music-making process. Guitars Yngwie, vocals Yngwie, bass Yngwie, drums programmed but Yngwie. Terrible album. World on Fire, Blue Lightning, and Parabellum. Nothing I haven't said before. These three albums sound exactly the same, with the small exception that Blue Lightning is his second cover album and it features Smoke on the Water. Parabellum, his most recent work, which I'll mention again later, is objectively his worst album. Guitar magazines call it his best, which is just fucking insulting. It's also quite apparent that in recent years he's been writing all of his own lyrics without anyone being involved in the songwriting process but him. I vividly remember the chorus from the first single off of Parabellum, which I reacted to live on Instagram. There was a lyric passage in it that went, "Can't you see, to be free, not to burn, don't tread on me." What? All that in combination with Yngwie's vocals, a man who is not a singer by anybody's definition, annoyingly reoccurring in reverb-soaked drum samples and sloppy guitar tracks is just disappointing and makes you wonder if Yngwie realizes the standard that he's held to by fans to this day. Yngwie fans, even ones like me who aren't OG fans, you know, I wasn't around back in the 80s, we all still hold him to that fire and ice standard, and that just couldn't be farther from the truth right now. And now imagine like 6 full-length albums of just that, what I just described. Now, what I've talked about so far was studio albums, and I haven't even mentioned his live music, and quite frankly, I'm a bit afraid to. Remember when I said Yngwie was getting sloppy in the studio? Now imagine that in a live setting with him singing and playing at the same time, sweating, and instead of looking at the fretboard, facing straight ahead to face the microphone because he is singing. In fact, don't imagine, I'll show you. Yngwie's social media is a fucking riot, especially in recent days where he's just been pushing all of this overpriced crap on you so he can pay off all of his Ferraris. The abundance of just silly ass merch that he's been pushing over the past few months is so good I have to show you. Yngwie advertising for his signature strings, picks, guitars. For some reason even the pedal that's been discontinued since 2005 is nothing new on his social media. But just the effortless white label product merch items he's been releasing and advertising in recent weeks will certainly give you a good chuckle. These cheap-ass printed sneakers for $70, a faster than a speed of light shirt, a trilogy beanie, which is just, come on now. The Yngwie Malmsteen's Coffee Talk mug, that's the podcast he started recently. This Parabellum hoodie with what I can already tell is going to be a delicious sublimation print that is going to peel off after one laundry cycle, just like it did on my overpriced Superbad hoodie. The cheapest, worst looking phone case with its cheapest, worst album on it. Trilogy socks. Parabellum socks, of course. Parabellum minimalist backpack. I don't know what's minimalist about this backpack. There's not usually a lot of shit protruding from backpacks, but fine. An Yngwie Malmsteen's Coffee Talk pillow. You know, the podcast, as of recording this, has one episode out featuring Steve Vai, and that episode has around 100k views on YouTube right now. That's just kind of proof that this is just white label crap, because you don't upload one episode of a podcast that you don't know if it's going to succeed, wait until it gets 100,000 views and then go, alright, putting that on a pillow. No, this is just like drop shipping made to order garbage. There is no stock of this, I guarantee it. A trilogy mouse mat. I'm ashamed to admit I would actually buy that. That's kind of sick. Yngwie Malmsteen capri leggings for all the 2 women that listen to Yngwie's music. Yngwie Malmsteen joggers. If you leave the house wearing these, you are scum. A Parabellum pillow. See what I mean? An Yngwie Malmsteen says more is more t-shirt.
No, remember, less is more. I always said, how can that be? More is more.
An Yngwie Malmsteen says more is more mug. And these faster than the speed of sound socks. On malmsteenmerchandise.com, they got that song title wrong twice now. Whoever's responsible for this just deserves to be f***ing fired. This one's tolerable because it's printed onto the item correctly. The product title is just wrong. The other one, not so much. Something else Yngwie's pushed really hard on social media recently is the fact that he's now on Cameo, where for the low price of €495 you can get a personalized video message from the sweaty Swedish man himself.
Och lyssna på mina låtar och kolla på mina videor med Stabbe, Fogge, Dudde och Robban. Play loud.
Now, I've said a lot of shit in this video and very little of it was positive, and that's for good reason. However, I don't want you to think that I dislike Yngwie. I'm criticizing him because I love him, and because in my lifetime, no one ever got to experience him good. People lucky enough to see him back in the 80s to early 90s before he became a fat, sweaty, tone-deaf alcoholic and stopped making good music. That's who I wish to be, but sadly I'm not. But I'll still continue to listen to Yngwie's music because why wouldn't I? His old music is still unrivaled to this day. It is just the new music that is big poo-poo. I don't really have a conclusion for this video for all the things I've said over the past few minutes to culminate in, but you can kind of imagine what I want to say. You know, it's just sad. It's a tragic story to me. It's the downfall of a king, and I wish things had gone differently. But alas, they didn't go differently, and I'm here making this video. So, thank you so much for watching it. I hope you enjoyed it. My most recent video is somewhere up here. You can subscribe to the channel somewhere down there if you feel like it. All my social media is in the description, even TikTok. And there's a couple buttons below the screen that would help me out as far as the algorithm goes. So, I'll see you in next week's video.
Hello, Yngwie Malmsteen here. I think we're breaking this whole thing out. Hello. Which has a neck